Welcome to the Irish Revolution. What were the Dáil Courts? Of all the revolutionary tumults to take place during the Irish Revolution, the formation of the Dáil Courts were among the most dramatic. They were also known as the Sinn Fein Courts or the Republican Courts. Established by the Revolutionary Parliament Dole Éireann in June 1919, the Dole established arbitration courts in every county. By June 1920, the Dole had established a hierarchy of civil and criminal courts around the country. Parish courts for minor matters, cases involving debts or compensation of around £10 or less. District courts for the old parliamentary constituencies. Circuit courts where the judge, who would have been a qualified lawyer, most of the time anyway, was periodically sent to different counties to deal with cases in excess of £100, a right bit of money in those days. A separate system of land arbitration courts had been established in the west of Ireland, but these were not suppressed by the British. British law up to 1919 was to be applied, but Ireland's ancient Brehon law system could be cited. Parish courts dealt with small-scale issues, cases involving less than £10 of debt or compensation. These cases would have been heard by representatives of various groups in each Catholic parish, including clergy of all faiths, council members, local IRA, etc. The IRA intimidation, or the threat of intimidation, essentially meant that the established British court system was bypassed in favour of this revolutionary network. Courthouses were being burnt down across the country, and the British were unable to enforce their legal system. Even Unionist newspapers such as the Court Constitution, for example, praised the court system, saying that they were delivering fair verdicts and justice. The courts were seen as one of the most interesting phenomenons in the national and even international press, with American journalists taking a particular keen interest. Punishment varied a lot. The IRA were unable to run a prison system, of course. There was also an Irish Republican police force at the time, concurrent to the Irish Republican Army, as they were now known, and they were responsible for enforcing the wishes of the court. The Limerick Leader newspaper reported on a case in 1920 of two men who had disobeyed an order to rebuild a wall they had demolished. Quote, banished to an island off the Clare coast for 3 weeks, a party of the RIC who attempted to rescue them were pelted with stones and abused by the prisoners, who declared proudly that they were citizens of the Irish Republic and that the police had no right to interfere. Austin Stack, who, I might as well just tell you, I'm not his biggest fan. Austin Stack was the Minister for Home Affairs, and he would have been, in theory, in charge of the courts, was, in the words of historian Diarmaid Ferriter, often bullying and pedantic in his abusive missives to overworked and confused registrars in his attempt to control district courts, unquote. Ferriter also said of the courts that, quote, Cahir David recalled that after the creation of the hierarchy of courts, most were administrating justice as they saw fit, with no prescribed code of law for them to administer and with no rules of court, unquote. The courts were to prove a major success in shaping public opinion. They were undoubtedly small c conservative, with an abundant preoccupation with personal morality, enforcing licensing laws and pubs, for example, protecting property, in some cases protecting women from abusive language. It's a very patriarchal court. This reflected in many ways the makeup of the judicial figures and the strong influence of the temperance movement in Ireland at the time. Considering Ireland's long association with problem drinking and all that, this is something worthy of an episode by itself, an exploration of alcohol in Irish history and Irish culture. So for the last few minutes, I hope you'll just indulge me. I want to talk a little bit about my own native county of Monaghan and Francis O'Duffy. You can read his account in the Bureau of Military History website. I'll link to it in the description. Francis O'Duffy, a judge of the Dáil Courts in Monaghan, recalled that the cases were mainly petty disputes which were not overly difficult, and the decisions that they made were rarely challenged. He talks about one case where a prominent Sinn Féiner refused to accept the court's decision. He was then fined £5 and forced by the local IRA. Quite a variance with that seen in The Wind That Shakes the Barley, where a local bigwig was condemned by the court, but the punishment was not enforced by local IRA. It's difficult to assess how far and wide cases like this were. Was it more like O'Duffy's courtroom, or was it more like Ken Loach's movie? By by the way, I'd love to show that scene here, but I'm scared of copyright issues. I'm not having a go at Ken Loach, by the way, or his movie, The Wind That Shakes the Barley. I think it's great. You know, it's not 100% historically accurate either. O'Duffy was not a legal scholar, and he makes fun of the solicitors who quoted legal precedents at him during court cases. He admits that the judges, by and large, didn't know much about that. He highlights this with the following admission. Quote, "In one case of this kind, I got over all legal difficulties by saying that our court was a court of justice rather than a court of law. Instead of evicting the tenant, we made him take the pledge for a year," unquote. Now, in case you're wondering, the pledge is a reference to, again, temperance, not drinking alcohol. So they made him take a pledge not to drink alcohol for a year. I have no idea whether he reneged on that pledge or if he kept his pledge. In January 1922, with the signing of the treaty, it was ordered that the British courts should continue to operate. This baffled the many district judges, clerks, etc., who put their lives at risk operating these illegal revolutionary courts. To quote Ferreter again, quote, "It seemed to render empty much of the rhetoric used in the previous 2 years concerning the need to protect the public from these enemy courts," unquote. So, what were the great success of the Dáil Courts? They demonstrated that Britain could not apply its law in Ireland. They demonstrated both to the Irish and to the world that the revolution seemed to have broad consent among Irish people, as even Unionist inclined people were forced to admit that the justice provided was fair. They were of undoubtedly great propaganda value. And perhaps most importantly, their mere existence made a mockery of British claims that the IRA, Sinn Fein and the Republican movement were just gangsters or were terrorising the Irish people, as they were inclined to claim in the British media. It was clear that out in the country, a revolution was taking place. So, thanks for listening, guys. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. I really want to up the ante on this. I'm going to start doing a month by month, blow by blow breakdown of the War of Independence starting in January, but I'll be posting that sometime in December. Also, click the links. I have an Amazon affiliates link. I don't expect to make any money out of it, but you know, you'd be helping me pay with Amazon gift vouchers for a few books, but all to do with Irish history. Don't you doubt that now, eh? For example, that lovely Cambridge History of Ireland series is out now, and it's bloody expensive. I'm waiting to payday to buy it, but I don't think I'll get it till January. It's just too expensive. So anyway, I've linked a few books there in the description with the Amazon affiliates. If you clicked a few of them, and if you bought one or two of them, you know, you'd be helping out the channel in a great way. And finally, any questions you have at all, it doesn't have to be about the Dáil Courts, it can be about anything. Put it there in the comments section and I'll do a Q&A episode. I might even show my face, we'll see if I can find a good camera for that or something. I'll do a Q&A episode and we'll talk about some of these random questions you might have about the Irish Revolution. It can be about any period in Irish history, though. Personally, I might not know all that much about different periods of Irish history, no more than your average guy, you know. This period of history would be my stronger suit. Anyway, so again, thanks very much for listening. Thanks very much. Bye.